Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Okay, we are back at it with another episode, and we're talking about training effort. And this has been something that I've been talking a lot about lately with clients. I see people talking about it. I don't know, it's like maybe you click on one thing on the internet and then suddenly the whole internet just
feeds it back to you.
It like you get the version of the internet that has that topic at the top of every
right.
Yeah. But the concept is, are people training hard enough? Is overtraining a thing? Are people close to burning themselves out? Do we need to be like reminding people to like moderate their intensity on things? Or should we get back to just like, go for it, like go crush yourself? And will people inherently push themselves too hard, or will they likely err on the side of not pushing themselves hard enough? Like what is the average person out there doing?
Yeah.
I actually have a lot of curiosity about this because I'm 6 years removed from CrossFit sport. I can say without a doubt that when I was in the CrossFit world and the CrossFit sport world, that people who were getting drawn into that style of training were pushing it hard. Like the effort was sufficiently there for most of them. And in many cases they're giving effort that went beyond what their bodies were capable of handling in those moments. Meaning, it's like, I don't know why this example just came to mind, but like if you've seen mogul skiers, like competitive mogul skiers, like they do freestyle, like the freestyle jumping, skiing, like they bomb through these like crazy big moguls, and it's just like, think about doing like a 300-pound leg press, like boom, 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 like their legs are just, if you just like put like Granny out there and just sent her down this with no training, like her leg would her hip would shoot out, like her leg would be dismantled like from her body, right? That's too much intensity for what that Granny is prepared for.
It's an extreme example.
Extreme example. I feel like I saw that in the CrossFit sport. I saw like that
was just a Wednesday.
Jeff showed up and he's like, "This is my first week. I want to do that. Let's do that workout." And it's just like, whoa, that thruster and the knee shoots right out of the skin. So we saw a lot of that. We did a lot of education for people around like, okay, this is how you like do this a little bit smarter so that you can do this, for a long time. And now what I also realized is that when I was in the Globo gym for years before that was not what I was seeing.
Oh yeah.
Same. I didn't see somebody like, that guy's going too aggro on the curl machine over there. Like, take it easy on those calf raises. You're about to injure yourself.
Yeah.
There were people that were going to like maybe injure themselves, like doing stupid stuff, but they were not the majority. Like there were people that just moved poorly, and it was like, oh, that's not really the best way to do that. And there were people, I'd say like there was a lot of ego bench pressing that was getting people into issues. Occasionally there were some ego leg press people, but it was not the majority by any means. There were definitely people that were going maybe a little too hard on the cardio, with like no real like plan for how this was going to fit into their long-term fitness. But that was it. Mm-hmm. So what do we need to teach those people? We need to teach them how to train hard. And guess what? They found out how to in the CrossFit gym.
Right.
They got their bell rung. They were like, holy shit, this is how you exercise hard. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even have to really try. I just had to like follow the 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 thing and try and move a little faster. And that was magical because I knew how to train hard. I built that from an early age. I worked at it. I had a decade of experience of like, I'm pushing myself. I know how to push myself. I've learned these lessons slowly but surely over the years, how to dig in. I've watched the training videos. I'm like, okay, I know how to do it. Most people, that never occurred to them. Like, I'm not on this planet to like learn how to work hard. Like, life is hard enough, you know? And then they realize their body's not changing the way they want it to change. It's changing in negative ways. I might have to work a little harder for this. This is really difficult to like get intensity in this Globo gym. I don't even know what I'm doing. I should go try a fitness class. This one was okay. This one's okay. Whoa, this one made me throw up on the first day. This must be good. I know what I'm doing. I'm an athlete now. And they just went full, whole hog. Let's go. And then that led to problems we saw. So I hear people being like, it's all about effort. We got to push the effort. And I'm like, well, I've been in situations where that was not the right move. Don't tell people, just go for it, you know? But then I've also been in situations where I'm like, you're right. That's the right move. Yeah, you need to, that was not hard enough. I think you have like 10 reps left that you could have done after that set. Like, that was a good warm-up set. And, they hit their actual, like, best set on their last set, but the first 3 or 4 sets didn't really count. Like, okay, now we got to do 4 more. Like, you're finally there. So I think this EMOM, training format in Pump 40 was just really hitting home for people. It was like, by the 4th or 5th set, they're like, oh, now I'm really into it. I'm working my ass off. I got 5 more sets to do. It's like, okay, now we're getting good working sets in. So anyhow, this is what I'm thinking about. And I'd love to, I don't know, shoot the shit on this one a little bit.
Oh yeah, we can dig into this one
Okay.
for sure. On the EMOM note, by the way, I was in the gym the other day and you were pushing real hard. I could hear the grunting, I could hear the grinding, and I was like, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm doing an EMOM. And I was like, how many sets do you have? And like, I was just thinking like you were like about to die and you're like, 8 more. Like,
Right? It's like, that was when I got to work. Yeah.
right. But my thought around this a lot is that so much of hard work comes from the context of what you see around you. Mm-hmm. And how do people get that information? Because I know that my training took a big turn when I started doing CrossFit and started seeing women who were 20 years older than me at the time absolutely wiping the floor with everybody. Like, just, and then you see, oh, that's what that looks like. That's what's possible. That didn't even occur to me. So what are some other ways that people can get informed about what effort looks like or feels like? And my other thought that I'll just throw into the mix is I'm thinking of the post I sent you recently from the woman who was like, oh, I literally just realized that I shouldn't be in pain literally every single workout. Mm-hmm. Like, that it shouldn't feel like I'm tearing my legs off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think creating like, here we are in real time, like 15 minutes ago, we were on a different podcast talking about a different topic, but if people were listening a week ago, they heard that we were talking about the idea of like under eating versus like not eating enough, under fueling. It's kind of a similar concept. It's like you have to create some benchmarks for people to like think about, like what equates to you pushing it too hard or not pushing it enough, and in the diet example, we were like, hey, if you've like lost your menstrual cycle, like you probably have been dieting pretty hard and your body fat's sufficiently low for long enough that this is creating some hormonal changes in your body. You might want to address those if you want to have, if you want to reproduce. On the topic of training intensity, that's like, yeah, you should not hurt every day. Like if you hurt every day, or if you have significant delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, like, and you're constantly sore to the point of like, you just don't even really want to move. Like, that's not okay. That's pushing it too hard. More so, like you're pushing it so hard, it's unnecessary. Like that's not helping you grow more than the other person over there. It might be creating some like mental toughness or mental resilience, but you know that you only need so much of that in life, and especially if you're not a competitive athlete, like you don't need as much. Like, I don't know, there's a point at which it's diminishing returns. The other part is like, how do we create benchmarks of like, you know, this is not working hard enough. With like the nutrition example, it's like, hey, you've been under eating for too long or like in too much of a deficit. This happens. You've been overeating. You're gaining body fat. You're overweight. You know, you're obese. Like, those are signs that the energy balance equation's been off. Now, what's the cause of that? You know, that's a very complicated and complex conversation. But on the training side, you know, what's a sign that you're not working hard enough? It's like, well, you never get sore, like zero soreness. You know, you don't even feel, you couldn't, you wake up the next day like, hey, what did you train yesterday? Like, I can't even tell. Like, I don't even feel what's going on in my body. You know, what are the signs that you're working hard enough on a given set of weight training? It's like, how much, you know, physical exertion, and then the signs of physical exertion being like, you know, you're grunting, or, you know, are you actually sweating when you lift weights, or have you ever got drenched in sweat from lifting weights? Like, have you ever actually gone to failure? And that's something that I think people they might be scared of. And there's no like, do you even know what that feels like? And this is where I think like machine training can be really beneficial. It's like, oh, you don't want to go to failure in a back squat because you don't know how to safely get out of a back squat. But maybe we could try just like going to failure in a push-up. Like keep doing push-ups until you literally fail, you know. Or let's do a leg hamstring curl. We're going to go until you like literally cannot pull that. I'm going to just make you keep going until the thing physically stops moving. The leg curl machine stops moving, the arm. That's what failure feels like, you know. And you have to push people super, super hard, because there's like actual mechanical failure, and then there's like when I want to quit because it doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. And those are not always in the same place. And oftentimes they can be very far apart. You know, like, this is getting hard. I don't really want to push it that much more. Well, guess what? Your voluntary quitting moment or stopping moment in training is 5 or 10 reps away from actual mechanical failure of your tissues. And until we get to that 3 to 5 rep or even closer to actual mechanical failure, you might not be getting the right stimulus that we need to like really change your body. So how do we teach people to like train harder? And again, going back to the CrossFit example, this is where it was so amazing. It was like these workouts had rep ranges and schemes, and then metabolic fatigue and a whole bunch of fatigued elements in there that it brought people to failure regularly, multiple times in the same set even. And it's like, I got to do 150 wall balls. Guess what? Like, I'm going to voluntarily quit a few times. Then I'm going to actually maybe get to like the mechanical failure point where I start missing the target because I can't throw it high enough. Mm-hmm. You know, and then by the end of the workout, depending on your level of fitness, you may have failed 10, 15 times. So you got all the way to that failure point many, many times. So you felt it, you know, and you really pushed it. And I'm not saying that doing 15 failed attempts a workout is ideal. That's too much. That person walked away and they felt their legs for the rest of the week, maybe until the next week, you know. But at least it taught them something that they hadn't experienced before. And so now it's like, okay, you're armed with this knowledge of like, are you training, you know, what does it mean to train closer to failure? Then we can now we have like a benchmark and we can start to talk about it.
Yeah.
So we use, oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask how you start to map that knowledge gap to the person, because, for example, I was thinking of the 30-30 row test, which is a power output test. And you row 30 seconds and you rest 30 seconds and you repeat. And you said at one point, we would never give that test to a certain type of athlete because they just wouldn't be capable of producing power in the first place. So it's pointless.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Yeah. There's certain tests that will help somebody really understand their fatigue failure point more than others. And the 30-30 row test, it's like if somebody if they're not strong enough or they don't have good enough rowing technique, or, they don't have enough training experience, then they might not ever really produce like their max power on that. Like it's too hard of movement mechanically for them to get there. Whereas if you put them on a bike and you said, I want you to sprint on this bike for 30 seconds as hard as you can, then there's a lot less skill involved. They just have to push the pedals and pull the arm cranks really hard. That might be a better test. And maybe it's not 30 on, 30 off, because as we know, that bike for 30 seconds, it's a different amount of output than the rower, and it's probably too hard for people to recover from in 30 seconds and repeat a bunch of times. But yeah, you're right. Like, what is the test? And that's why when I was giving the example of like a push-up or a leg curl, like a hamstring curl on the machine, it's like, well, if we set the weight correctly on that, like we can get anybody to lift that thing up and get into the 10 plus rep range. And then, okay, we want to find what it feels like to fail between 15 to 20 reps. Like we can get them there, maybe safely. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's certain to experiment with what those are and making sure that people get enough opportunities to like push to failure.
Yeah. So let's say someone has had an appropriate test and maybe they've started to learn, okay, this is actually what failure looks like and feels like on something that feels safe for me to get into, or that's within my ability to really feel that. Well, that feels awful. That feels really hard. So how do you then learn how to take that into your training in a way where, okay, I feel like I can push hard, but I know I can do it. I can rise to the occasion to get this feeling that might be my body telling me, oh, for the love of God, please stop. Yeah,
well, this great segue into the next portion of the conversation, which is once you've set this like kind of benchmark for yourself, like, okay, this is how hard I can push. Then we go back to educating people, like, you don't need to push that hard every day.
Right.
Right? You actually shouldn't push that hard every day. That's counterproductive to good training. And so it's like, do you have a benchmark yet? No. Then don't worry about like rate of perceived exertion, blah, blah, blah. Like, figure out for a little while like how to push maximally. You're likely not going to be like injured and like, it's like that first 3 to 6 month honeymoon phase of CrossFit where everyone was just seeing gains. It's because they were just working hard and it was fine. It was like, they're good. Some people got injured in the first 3 to 6 months and had bad experiences, but by and large, it was like this really positive thing that was happening. Then at some point it got problematic because they had learned, they got a bit stronger, they were able to really push some serious weights or some serious intensity, and they had it in their brain that this is what needed to happen every day. But really, a smart way to do it would say, hey, it's October coming up. We got 4 weeks in October. Week 1, I want you to come in, and that like feeling of going max 100%, I want you to go 70% of that this week, all week, 70%. In week 2, we're going to go 80%. In week 3, we're going to go 90%. And in week 4, we're going to knock it out of the park. We're going to let you just go nuts. And then the next week is the first week in November, and we're going back to that 7. And that's kind of how we flow through training. And we're trying to teach people like this is it. Like we go at this, we periodize, we progressively overload training in this way where we intentionally dial it back. Because when we dial back intensity, we open up opportunities for other traits to get better. Our quality of movement, our technique, our mind-muscle connections. It allows for tissue repair and for adaptations to happen from the last peak intensity phase that you went through. You know, your body starts to like get primed, and you start to build, and then boom, you're ready to go all out. And when you go all out, your body's prepared. You set the foundation for it, and now you can do it. It's like we practice all week, and then we have the game on Sunday.
Yeah.
We practice all week, and we have the game on Sunday. Well, it's the same thing with training. It's like we're gonna practice for the first week. We're gonna like speed up practice, for the next couple weeks, and then in the last week we're gonna have the scrimmage, and we're gonna go for it. We're gonna have the game, and we're gonna really push it. And this over and over, building of effort and intensity is what keeps us in the game a long time, allows us to make progress, keeps us feeling good, keeps us excited and interested in training. I mean, there was so much mental burnout that happened for people at some stage of CrossFit. It's like, I can't imagine just, hitting it hard like this every day. It's like, imagine if they had done like 2 weeks of pump and then did like, a week of perform and then a week of just all out CrossFit. And it's like, oh, that feels like a progression in a way for them.
I want to dig in a little more to what it feels like to do 70%, 80%, 90%, because that can be very clear if you're working off a 1RM and you have a percentage lift. Even then, it's a little bit debatable depending on your recovery and your readiness for that day. But I remember first starting functional bodybuilding and I had a 75% effort or a 90% effort, and just having no context for what that meant, and always feeling like I should be working harder than I actually was.
Yeah. Well, I can do a better job of this. We can do a better job of like mapping that out more clearly for people and creating a much more rhythmic increase in effort, so that what you end up being able to do is just comparing yourself to your own efforts week after week rather than some, theoretical maximum.
Yeah.
But there are a number of ways to think about this. And this effort concept, I think, is not as good as the reps to failure concept. Reps to failure is a great concept. It's also not perfect. None of these are perfect. But if you could truly feel like, okay, within 1 rep, I'm going to fail, or within 2 reps, I'm going to fail, or 3 reps. Like if you had it down to like specific rep counts, then that equates to the 70%, 80%, 90%, 70% means you have 30% left or 3 reps left in the tank, right? This would be how you could calculate it or create something a little bit more discrete. What I would say is that 70%, or like this 7 out of 10, is a level of effort that allows your body to really be like almost in healing mode. Like it's healing, it's regenerating. It's not,
feels good.
Yeah. It's not breaking down, right? Like I did 70% efforts today on my lifts, and like I had a couple reps in there that were like, but I didn't ever think I was going to miss a rep, and I was able to stay really focused on my technique, and I'm like, I kind of have a sense of like, yeah, like I didn't totally zap myself today. And then move on forward through progressions, and it's like, okay, you set that foundation, and then you also know what max is, and so just take measured increases from the regenerative training session to the maximal training session, and that becomes your 80 and your 90 and your midpoints along the way. The other thing is that not every part of your training needs to follow this concept. Right? Because we're talking about like increasing the effort of a set. That is probably best done in most instances and most measurably for people with weight. Like increasing weight is probably the easiest way to like follow these progressions of effort, because you can actually like, you have control over the incremental increases in load. And so I think on a given day of training in your program, you should always have 1, 2, maybe 3 lifts that you're focused on that, and you use as your foundation, your benchmark for growth. Mm-hmm. Now, pre-fatigue, warm-up, accessory lifts, conditioning, they don't have to follow that as well. They could be like, okay, the goal in this is pick a weight that you're confident with, and then every week we're going to add some reps, You don't have to ever think about like, am I working hard? Like you've figured out a good weight that allows you to kind of get in the range of like reps to failure, but you get a good muscle pump, you have good technique, you can really work on the stretch position of a movement pattern, work on mobility, mind-muscle connection. And guess what? You need to put in some extra volume, but you don't need all of your reps every day to be at like a specific intensity to see growth. You need some things that you're actually tracking and working towards improving week after week after week. And so you reserve that to your 2 to 3 lifts, and then the other portions, you're getting the work done. And don't be so concerned with like, did I get 8 out of 10 or 9 out of, like, no, just do it with quality.
Yeah. I want to pause you there because I think that concept can be missed by a lot of people who tend toward the overtraining spectrum. Mm-hmm. And that's very easy to absorb with that message of more pain, more gain, or sure. If you don't crush yourself through every single part of the workout, you failed.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to highlight that, especially with functional bodybuilding, there are several components of the training that are specifically there to help you feel good, to help prevent injury, to help you have better joint tissues and health and move better in all kinds of different ways. It's not 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 on the effort scale from the moment you start to the moment you finish.
Precisely. Yeah. And that, some of those for us is strength balance. For some people, that's our conditioning work. They get to the conditioning work and that's not the area that they want to, push it. And Sati raised her hand because she's, and that's great. It's like, but I want to move. I want to get in some cardiovascular work. Feels good. Yeah. And again, it's like you could use those sections of training to be the regenerative, like feel good sections of training so that you walk away and you're like, I moved really well. Like we talk about finishers being like finish with quality, not finish with intensity, being a great way to leave the gym, all of that stuff. So yeah, I definitely think that is a concept that is lost on some people. And sort of when I had my big injury in college to my back, this was sort of what I think I went down a pretty bad like path of overtraining, and it was because of this. Like I had been training for quite some time at that point and followed other programs that like were set out for me where it was like clearly like this is the hard work and then this is the stuff that we do on the side, and I kind of adopted like the work really hard, get this done, go home. And then I started to like always want to do more. So I was like, I'm going to start writing my own programs. And I started writing these programs for myself that were like, basically, well, I love that. That was like super hard. And then I want to take this part that's super hard and this part that's super hard. And I'll do all 3 and I'll cut out all the easy shit,
Yeah.
And, it's like, yeah, it was cool for like a month. But then like, I was like, man, I'm always freaking hurting. And like, I had this spot in my low back that just like always feels hot and tight. Like, okay. And then one day, that turned into like, oh, the hot and tight is starting to feel like tweaky and twingy and like, oh man, like my back really hurts and like, oh, I can't bend over and, oh, I'm totally out. Like I'm screwed up. Like, what did I do?
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, it goes back to the beginning. It's like, are you a type of person that knows how to push it and you push it too hard? Or are you a type of person that doesn't know how to push it, and out in the world, there's probably a lower percentage of people that are pushing it too hard than there are people who are pushing or not pushing it enough, like just in the world. Maybe in this CrossFit sphere that we were in for a while, maybe it was more skewed towards the other part. Or maybe it was just the dose response was so high, or like the dose was so high and the response was like maximal for a lot of people, given their training history, pushing them beyond max. That became kind of a problem. And maybe it's in our functional bodybuilding community. Like we're not like a perfect sample of the population that's out there in the world. We're a very unique population. And so if you're listening to this, like, I push it a lot, push it hard, or maybe do I like err on the side of playing a little safe?
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyhow,
one more question for the people who play it safe, because I think a lot of women, myself included, have struggled with this, of just feeling like I don't quite know what I'm doing, and I feel conservative to put a lot of weight on and do something that I'm not super comfortable with, and I'm afraid to get injured. So how does one in that situation start to push a little bit harder while still feeling safe?
Yeah, I think it's maybe picking getting around training partners that are doing it better than you, or not better, but like who have more experience. And you can see, like you said, it's like, oh, I walked into the gym and I saw these women that were 20 years older than me just crushing it. Like, it gave me an example, so that would be useful. Maybe it's doing it with a coach, like one-on-one, who understands that the goal is to teach you how to push harder. And then maybe the third thing is, find the one thing that you do feel a little safe, or you feel more safe doing. The one exercise, the thing that you feel confident in, and use that to start, setting your benchmark. It just came to mind, like, in even if you're like somebody who once upon a time knew how to really push it, like if you get out of training of doing that, you can lose sight of it, and it's hard to get back in. And Nate's editing, an episode for YouTube coming up where I trained with Megan, and we got together on a day. We came into the gym and we did, I think it was like a leg day session, and she's just like, oh my God, I'm feeling like I'm feeling barfy. And we're like lifting weights. Like, she was pushing it in a way that she hadn't pushed in a little while. So it was like, Megan knows how to push it. She's been there. She's done all the stuff, but it's like you get out of training a little bit, and it's like, hey, having these periodic reminders of what it's like to really go for it can be good to help you recalibrate like what you should be doing in the gym. We talk about this with like testing phases of training, or like benchmark weeks, or like, the last week of the training cycle. It's like, I want you to fail, like go for it. Like, obviously do it with as much precautions and safety. Like, don't go for a max on the bench press without a spotter. Like, be smart, but like, yeah, like it's okay. I mean, we're taking calculated risks to help you remember inside of you, like physiologically, that's what hard is.
Yeah. And
I'm going to say this. It's like, I just, of course, thought of like Liver King in the Barbarian workout. But like, he's got this thing where it's like every Saturday I go out and I do the hardest workout that I can possibly think of. And it just sort of it reminds me of what I'm capable of. And I was thinking about this the other day when I was doing my mountain bike ride. Like, I have a new ride that I'm doing that's like right from my house, and it's the hardest ride I have ever done. And I've done it probably like a half a dozen times now, and it's hard every time. And I'm like, just like the number of times on the way up the mountain that I'm like, I should just go back home. Like, it's like literally if I turn 180 degrees, it's all downhill and I can just be home. It's like, it's so easy to just
30 seconds.
Hit the eject. Yeah, I'll be home in 30 seconds. It's, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to stop until I get to the peak view. And when I get the view, then I'm done. And it's just such a powerful reminder of like, oh man, that's what it feels like to work really hard,
Yeah.
So anyway, that I think those could be some strategies. Get around some other people, get a coach to walk you through it, find something that feels safe, and like you won't hurt yourself, and then maybe, make a date with with yourself, whether it's once a week or once a month. Like, I'm going to go do this super hard thing that I've done before, so I know I can do it. And it's going to be my reminder of like, whoa, yeah, that's working hard.
Yeah. And sometimes it's so mental too. It's like, if you need to, just baby step it up. One more rep, or a little bit more weight, or just one more RPM on the assault bike, or.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's where a coach would be really helpful. Be like, hey, I think you got one more. Let's do one more. You got this. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we sufficiently got into that topic.
Okay.
So thank you for humoring me, everybody. And if you have questions on this one, please hit us up. Which category are you in? How do you identify? And where does that create problems for you? Slide into the DMs.
Let us know.
Here. All right. Catch you next week.
Bye.